Well, now to close the, the event for today, my name is Eric Díaz. Vamos a hacerlo mitad español y mitad en inglés. Aquí, feel free, response in English or in Spanish, no problem. I know, I don't understand español, but I question in English, no problem. But si quiere responder en español, le responde en español. Yeah? I practice your Spanish. Is the moment. Well, I read for your. ¿Dónde está? Aquí está. Okay. It's a pleasure here today. For the next, we introduce our panelists. First, Pedro Cerdeira. Pedro is a board member, investor, and managing director, Business Club. Is correct? Yeah, perfect. Anguiri Rios. Okay. Matt. Hi, Matt. Matt is a managing director, Coding Sans. Yeah, is correct. And Jaime Gil. Yes, okay. Principal of Swan Lab. Perfect. I start the roundtable with one simple question. Please take your reverse pitch for your funds. Please.
Should I start? Do you want me to do it in English or in Spanish?
Siéntete libre.
Okay.
3 minutes for reverse pitch. And
I can do it in both if you want.
Yeah.
Reverse pitch for the fund, very simple. We specialize in Web3. We're 3 capital. Anything that is Web3 or eventually deep tech / artificial intelligence. And it's mostly B2B or transformational. We want to listen to you. Done.
Okay, thanks. Come in.
I don't run a fund, I'm an angel. I invest mostly in food security related startup and educational technologies. I just sold my company to a leading strategy consultant company, so I'm focusing on this one. And that's all.
Oh, perfect. And you? Oh, no. Push there. No. Yeah.
Okay. So I am the CEO of Weave Acceleration. We're an accelerator based in New York City that supports international companies going to the US market. We are actually now closing our first round on our fund. We'll be co-investing in the Series A's and B's of international startups that are going to US market. So first committed check in a very tough market to get investment as a foreign founder. And we'll be focusing the first fund on fintech, retail, companies with an angle of sustainability, primarily also B2B.
Thank you very much.
And Swan Lab is a Hispano-Israeli fund. We just raised our second fund. We focus on B2B companies in Spain with focusing in the technology and with a differentiation worldwide. As I told you at the beginning, it's a Hispano-Israeli fund, so the origin is Israeli, and we try to do with Spanish companies what Israelis do in Israel, in a way that we invest in companies from Spain with a Spanish team focusing in Spain, and then the moment we invest in the companies, we focus the companies to go outside in Europe, Latin America, the US, etc.
Thank you. Hi, Anguirus.
Yeah, Argyros.
Yeah, CEO of Anthology Ventures.
Yes, hi. So we are an angel studio, and what we like to say is that we incubate both startups. We're sector agnostic, but also we incubate in parallel angel investors. So we try to put them in an osmosis, both of them. So our investments are done in a syndicate form. And we are not looking for startups that are out only for money, but for both the extra work that is required on a venture studio, and of course some early stage funding.
Perfect, thank you. Well, the venture capital, the market, changed in these years, you know? But how have these change impact in your ecosystems? Come in.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Well, the venture market has definitely changed the last few years, although it looks like more of the same. And everybody's like, okay, it's another bubble coming up or not. And talking about the relationship, you've been around in all those events, you're probably going to hear all the same cycle of topics keep repeating over and over again. But what we see is that since technology is becoming more of a commodity right now, and it's nothing exotic, it's not the ownership of someone privileged, and technology is in the hands of everyone right now, with our mobile phones, if not more. The rate of developments, the waves of innovation have accelerated. So what do we see? We see more faster go-to-market need, faster maturity cycles on behalf of, for the startups. But I don't believe we see faster support that is necessary. So what is important is to see how cross-border investment can, if they can, facilitate this acceleration that is necessary in these faster cycles. And because cross-border by default is kind of slower, you know, of the natural barriers, cultural, economic, political, we have a big challenge here. How to accelerate and adapt ourselves in a faster changing and moving investment ecosystem.
Perfect. Pedro?
Yeah, I see no difference, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Change is part of our job. It would not be our job if we would not know how to cope with change. I agree with the faster pace, absolutely, and it's everywhere. If you start looking back historically, for example, TV took about 50 years to get pretty much adopted everywhere. Cell phones were much faster. If you go to CDs and then DVDs, you get my meaning. So all of this becomes a lot faster in terms of time to market. That's natural, it's our job. Another eventual change that I would name here is the people who invest today. And in that sense, you're pretty much a good example. Investing, especially in VC, used to be reserved to quite a specific group of people, either family offices or corporate investors or something of the sort. What we see is democratization today in the sense that pretty much this is an asset class much like everything else, and everybody can jump in. There's a lot of people that have no idea what they're doing, but then again, that's not different than investing in the stock market. And in that sense, yes, it's become democratized.
Thank you.
Like I'm doing these angels thing for like 4 years by now. So the really early stage, nothing changed. I think that the time is where you could like fund yourself to market saturation without like being profitable and stuff like went away. But in Hungary, especially in B2C wasn't that proliferated because like it's a small market, more B2B was going on, and that scene didn't really change dramatically. I think like pre-seed seed stayed roughly the same, but Series A, B got like way harder without like normal traction and like substantial revenue.
Okay, thank you.
I can speak a bit more to the United States and the North American market, because that's really where we are based and where we support companies. There definitely have been a lot of shifts and changes over the last couple of years. I think in 2021, obviously there was a ton of investment and free money just kind of floating around everywhere. You saw a lot of startups in the United States get, very large rounds of venture capital for extremely high valuations, and that has cooled kind of across the board, not just in the United States, but we're seeing that globally with our partners as well, which means that it's an opportunity, I think, for the companies that are building really good, solid businesses to kind of rise to the top, because capital still is being deployed. Capital needs to still be deployed. That is our jobs. So there's definitely been change in that regard, I think, from a startup perspective. But with change and with difficult times also comes a lot of opportunity. So, I like to think about it in that way.
Thank you.
Actually, continuing with what you just said, I think the difference is that the funds have a lot of money and we have to deploy it. But a lot of funds used to spend it and deploy it very fast because the money was very easy to raise. Right now, as it's more complicated because of the market, there are other very attractive products with less risk. I think the funds are taking much longer and they look into other metrics. Metrics like profitability that before weren't so important, but now they are. So we look for companies that can stay with the investment for more time and they can grow longer with the same amount of money. And I think that's a big change that has occurred in the last years.
Okay, very interesting. And Rios, your great question in the drive. You talk about your question, please.
My question had to do with what we could do when in this technologically challenged environment to accelerate our ways of supporting startups, not just money, any kind of support with go-to-market and everything. Now, to me, this is imperative, because if you have faster innovation cycles, and that means the company will, become, but also decline much faster than before. So by default, that requires a much shorter time to help, but also, pluck all the fruits if you can. Now, that cannot happen with the same rhythm, and that definitely cannot happen with the same speed that we utilized before. Possibly with the same tools, but my hunch, and I'm not playing the wise here, is that we have to do something to keep up with the pace of things. The pace has changed. And many technologies are going to mature faster, and they will require lots of help, especially from the cross-border aspect. Because if you want to penetrate bigger markets faster, you're most probably going to need cross-border help. So if we have to reverse engineer that and see how cross-border tools help the modern needs of faster acceleration. Are, let's say, laws and taxation systems and everything that can homogenize processes prepared for that? My take is that they're not yet.
Please, responde. La pregunta es la que había hecho en el chat.
Anyway, no, I think the cross-border investments are very important and they can help a lot of the companies. But on the other side, I think that depends a lot in when you're investing in the company. When it's a seed company or late seed, maybe it's easier if you're local because it's the beginnings, of the company. So the first clients. After that, of course, you have to go outside and gain new markets and bigger markets. But in our point of view, as I told you before, our origin, it's Israel. In Israel is this type of market. It's very, very small market. So in the moment you are not a seed company, you have to go outside because there is no market to sell to. So that's what we try to do here in Spain. And I don't think at the beginning, in these first stages, the companies need a cross-border investment, but yes, they need a cross-border help to get outside. So there is a little bit the two things. A lot of times, the funds that are outside the country, maybe it's more difficult for them to help these companies. So I'm giving here the opposite point of view, more or less, to what we thought we were going to hear. But I think, in our point of view, it's working a lot, and actually, I think it makes a lot of sense when a company is starting, have the help right next to them, and after that, go outside. Actually, all the second investments from our companies have been from outside Spain. So the funds were international.
Thank you. What is your point of view?
I can join Jamie in this one. So in Hungary, we see that nobody is really willing to write first check for Hungarian founders from abroad, because it's like, we have certain handicaps on this one, but all the second rounds are usually flipping to a jurisdiction what is internationally welcome, like UK or US, and in the second round, most of the time international money is coming in because that's how you build global stuff. So the first round have to be local. As an angel, I don't really invest in anything further than 50 kilometers from myself, because you have to be there to lay the foundation to be strong, and after the seed stage you are Hungary is same as Israel in this stage, it's a really small market, so if you can't really be profitable from there.
Okay, I love this question. So we've worked with governments from all over the world, and maybe for context, we've worked now with over 300 startups from more than 35 different nationalities around the world. So I get to see kind of a point of view of a lot of different kind of the mindsets, speeds in different market that entrepreneurs are building things. And it's tough. I think a lot of times when we see, there's a trend with European companies too, where they're almost too cautious in a way. They want to build slow and carefully before they start looking at bigger markets like the US. Whereas almost as a matter of need, companies from Israel, or we do a lot of work also with Singapore, very small markets, they need to get out quick in order to be able to build, because if Singapore is 5 million people, that's smaller than all of New York City in the United States. So it's a very big difference. But it's tough, right? Because you need to have first sort of check. I think there's kind of two things that can be done here. One, in the local market, having VCs that are willing to do partnerships with other players in the United States. We recently partnered with a Polish VC called Unfold VC, where they're going to invest 150 to 250K checks into 2 early stage companies that are then going to go through our US Accelerator program, which is really exciting, because then from an earlier stage, we're going to be helping these companies think outside of their market and not just solve a problem that's based in Poland, but that's going to be that's a problem solving for the whole world, or starting for the market. We've also seen companies go through our program, we had a company from India in the logistics space called Locus, and from the moment they applied to our accelerator program, they had not done any business yet in the US, but from day one incorporated as a Delaware C, because they knew that that was going to be their biggest market opportunity, and they've now raised over 100 million in the United States. So having that kind of global mindset, or working with investors or partners in Spain that also can help you with a global mindset, I think can be really critical. And then seeking out those partners, even if you're still in Spain and starting to do your kind of early stage customer development and exploration, add some customers, in the broader Europe to have kind of research conversations, or in the United States. I think there's ways to start thinking about global sooner, because technologies, as we said earlier, change so fast now. And I've seen companies miss the mark on the biggest potential market, like the US, because competitors took up the share in the year of the time where they were waiting to develop and go. So there is definitely something, I think, to speed.
Thank you.
So I think there's no debate that you need to go global from day 0 or day -1. You need to think about something which is going to be global, and that's your only way to compete and to have scale and critical mass. in this type of market. Having said this, I don't think you have borders. You have two things. You have culture and regulation. The way that you sell in Israel is not the way that you sell in Hungary, for example, or take whatever example you want. You need to be able to deal with that, and you need to build for that. And your product needs to be built for being repackaged in different geographies according to regulation and according to culture. It's as simple as that. And you need to be able to reach these places in the world, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to survive. How do you do this? Well, it helps if on your cap table, apart from good investors, you have investors that can help locally expanding your business into other markets, and that's why you do this sort of cross-pollination things back and forth with all these investments. And at the end of the day, it's not a zero-sum game, and everybody has to gain from this. But you need to go global. I've been long enough at this game to see a lot of startups, especially in the early days here in Spain, to say that, oh, we're going to survive in Spain. There's 45 million people. This is plenty enough for us to live. And then if we need to expand, we go to Latin America, because there's a ton of people there that speak Spanish as well. But guess what? The way that you do things in Mexico, Colombia, whatever, it's not exactly the same way that you do here in Spain. So at the end of the day, if you don't build since the very, very early days, and that's the unfair advantage of countries like Singapore and Israel, because you cannot survive with the internal market on its own. The thing does not stand on itself. And when you start doing this from the early days and from the beginning, it's easy to look at the world as a flat place.
Thank you very much.
Can I please continue with the idea that he just said? I think there's another sometimes problem that happens to the entrepreneurs when they tell us, we want to be global. And of course, we want it to be global from the day one. But they want to go to the US from day one too. And that's very expensive. Of course, I understand it's the biggest market. If you're big there, you're big in the world, for sure. But we've seen a lot of companies too that went to the US, spent too much money, and then they have not been able to raise another round because they weren't big enough, and they were Spanish in the US, which at the end also changes. But of course, you have to be global from day one. And in Europe, we have a very good thing, which is we have a lot of markets right next to us with the same time zone, and it's quite easy to get to those markets.
Just one thing, you can comment on that if you want. The US, it's called United States. There's 50 of them.
Yeah, it's a complex market in the US too.
And it's different. You do not go to Oklahoma and you do exactly the same thing as you did in New York or California or whatever.
Or Mexico City is poof.
Yeah, the US is, yeah, it's like 50, it's the size of Europe, and the way that you go to different European countries is the same thing. And even from state to state, depending upon what you're building, like if you're in fintech or HR tech, there are different regulations in every single state. So navigating it can be really complex. It is really expensive. And that's why I always tell founders, before you make the leap, there are ways to test the market without having to spend so much money and time and resources. Like a lot of companies think in order to go to the US, they need to be able to hire, a general manager of the US or a very expensive salesperson for like $300K. You don't need to do that. So there's ways, and we work a lot with our companies on this, to like really leanly test the market before you decide to invest more capital in it to make sure it's the right next step for you.
Great questions for wonderful answers. Well, the time is over, but the last question. What is coming for a cross-border investment in the next 2 years?
What is common?
Yeah, where is coming?
Where is going?
Coming, yeah.
It's the,
The
crystal
future.
ball. It's the
The
crystal
futures.
ball question.
Well, it is the crystal ball question, right?
Yeah.
And since we don't have one,
In Amazon, I buy
us
one
guess.
crystal ball.
well, it's really, I didn't expect that question. It was a very common question, to be honest. And because I want to give something productive out there, and I was asked, I don't know. I really don't know. That's my very honest answer. Because on one hand, we have technological advancements that will most definitely going to require influence decision making.
Yeah.
So we'll see a lot of AI assistance at first level, screening and doing the job of many analysts that we now have. I'm not saying we should. I'm saying this is what I foresee. I see that the intuition it'll be very difficult to be replaced, at least in the beginning, and I hope at the end too. But if things are going faster, things are automated, I believe we're going to find ourselves before a transition, before we reach to a more definite state of how things will be done in the future. And in this transition, what I foresee is a lot of bumps on the road, to say that politely. So I don't know. For me, one of the most critical obstacles in the way to the future is regulatory. It has to do with taxation, it has to do with how things are done. And if we don't find a way to not bypass, but improve at least the way we communicate and coordinate our efforts, at least in a cross-border state of doing things, those bumps will be much more obvious and bumpy.
Thank you. Pedro?
So there's a couple of ways that we could answer that, but the only way to answer a crystal ball question is with perspective, and you take a couple of steps back. So there's one implicit question in there, which I'm going to address as well, which is the cap tables. And we're fundraising for our fund right now, and we have people from all over the world. That's the way it should be. I see no difference from somebody being on the north or on the south or on the east or on the west. So in that sense, what you will see is cap tables with international people and people that are used to these types of things, and it'll be absolutely normal, and people will be able to communicate, and that will then ladder down into the startups themselves and will contaminate in a good way the way that they think. The other thing is what's going to happen from the practical point of view, and how does this all play together. The way I see it, it's going to be done with strategy. I mean, it's incredibly stupid to say we're going to go to the US right now. Why? Because it's a big market. There's absolutely no reason to do that. And even like that, you do not go to the US as a whole. You go to the US in very, very specific actions and to do some very specific things in very specific locations. Much in the same way as you say, well, let's go to China. Where do you want to start? I mean, China just occupies pretty much 1/4 of the planet. So it's got to be done with strategy. You will find, I believe, groups of people that sort of feel and behave like a nation, but spread throughout the globe. And I'll tell you what I mean by this. As social and the internet sort of levels down, you'll find people that will have exactly the same behaviors located in San Francisco as in Beijing, or take your pick. And these people will belong to the same nation in terms of how they feel, how they, what they like, how they spend, and how they behave, and how they consume the products of startups. And I think that will be a challenge. But again, it needs to be done and dealt with in terms of strategy, and understand very well what you're doing.
Thank you. Matt, in 1 minute, please.
I will try to be very short. So I think that globally is getting more and more siloed. So our leaders are more on digging trenches, not building bridges. But in the silos, I think international investment will raise in like percentage-wise. And I think that the real big wins for the consumers and like the standard of living raises will be in Africa and India. So I definitely expect some consumer startups to like grow from there, because there are really different needs that aren't really met. But I think really big home runs in the developed world won't be that frequent as we used to it.
Thank you. Francis?
Well, I hope we see more cross-border investments, since that's my entire thesis. Also, I mean, for us, most of our LPs are international, just from, so I feel like my viewpoint is also skewed. I do think that there's opportunities within certain sectors for more cross-border investment as well. If you look at, for example, climate tech, it's an area that kind of everybody needs to be investing in right now. The US has just put together, for example, a lot of different programs that are very welcoming to companies in certain sectors. So if you're building in certain deep tech sectors, superconductors, there's a lot of subsidies for those types of companies to come to the US right now. So I think depending upon what challenges we need to solve, I'm hoping that that also opens up more opportunities for cross-border collaboration and investment.
Thank you. Jaime?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
No, just to finish and add something else, I think in the last years we had some a lot of American funds and funds from the UK that came to Spain, to Portugal, to new markets. Mainly, I think it was because of the opportunity of low valuations. But now that they've seen the markets, they've seen the products that we are building in these countries, I think they will still invest here. Right now they stopped a little bit, but they stopped all over the world, not just in these markets. So I think these international money, international and cross-border funds will start and continue investing here in other countries like Greece, Hungary, Spain, Portugal, etc.
Thank you very much. Bueno, démosle un gran aplauso a nuestros panelistas y nos vemos el próximo año. Thank you very much.